Welcome to the Bad Dad Horror Podcast with your hosts, John Couture and Sierra Couture. We all have daddy issues. Ours just comes with an extra helping of blood and gore.
Welcome back to the Bad Dad Horror Podcast. I'm your host, John Couture.
And I'm your co-host, Sierra Couture.
Well, Sierra, it's been a minute, hot minute. School came to an end. Summer started. You're playing outside more. We've realized we don't have a lot of time to record podcasts, but we're going to get better at this, aren't we?
Yep.
How'd your school at your end? Was it good?
Yep. It was.
How's your summer going so far? Is it pretty good?
Well, it's doing very good. We have an entire group outside, so it's very good so far.
Yep, you guys are living the 1980s throwback summer, aren't you? You guys are outside playing with your BMX bikes, having fun, getting scrapes on the knees, all that good stuff.
Yep.
Coming home when the streetlights come on.
Getting tackled by a 5-year-old.
Getting tackled by a 5-year-old, as it often occurs. Well, Sierra, people might mistakenly assume that we haven't been doing anything the last month or so, but we've been watching some movies, haven't we?
Yeah.
Well, today's very special episode of Bad Dad Horror Podcast, which I think we're up to episode number 10, maybe 11. I don't know. I think I've lost count at this point.
This is 11.
This is 11.
I think.
It goes all the way up to 11, which is one better than 10. You're too young to get that reference, but some people in the audience will be chuckling a little bit at that. This episode we're recording is going to talk about the entire Scream franchise. This may seem like a lightning round, as we're going to touch on all 6 movies in the 30 to 45 minute time frame that we have, and we're going to do our best to share our thoughts on each one. The impetus for this is really the Scream franchise is sort of the shining example that we were aiming for always. That Sierra wanted to watch the Scream franchise, but you can't watch the Scream franchise without having a basic knowledge of films such as Halloween, Friday the 13th, and some of the basic horror films that they draw upon and show homages to in this franchise. Sierra, first off, what were your thoughts overall on the Scream franchise, and do you think it was important for us to go through this process to learn about the older movies in order to watch the newer ones?
Yes, because a lot of the new movies have a reference to Scream and entire franchise, and like other movies that are old too. But yeah, I like the Scream franchise because I think it's I think especially the newer movies are really good at having characters that are like really involved and having more characters that somehow get involved in the story. So I like the Scream franchise. You
basically like parts 5 and 6 with Jenna Ortega and her crew, Marissa Barrio, and that type of thing, don't you? That's what you're excited
because they have more story. Yes,
they have more story. So you're saying the OG characters of Courtney Cox and David Arquette and Neve Campbell are just boring?
No, I like all those. I like that. I like all those movies, but I like Jenna Ortega the best.
Yes, so. You are a fan of Jenna Ortega, as are many of the younger generation, so that should be noted that she joined the franchise of Film 5. And spoiler alert, as always, if you have not seen the Scream franchise, you probably shouldn't listen to this podcast, but she survives Film 5 and then lives on to Film 6. Just generally over the top, let's just discuss a little bit about the Scream franchise. It originally the first film came out in 1996. Scream 2 was in 1997. Scream 3 was in 2000. Scream 4 was 2011, an 11-year jump there. And then there was another 11-year jump for Scream, which is titled Scream, but it was really Scream 5. And then less than a year later, Scream 6 came out March 10th, 2023. And it should be noted that Sierra and I went and saw Scream 6 in theaters after the latest Halloween film. Yes. This is the second horror film that you saw in theaters.
And now I have a poster of it.
You do have a poster, and if you those of you that have keen ears in the background probably hear a little bit of the Blue Angels that are soaring through and practicing before their show today. We apologize for that. Maybe we can take it on post. Doubtful.
Hello?
Hello?
Who is this?
You tell me your name, I'll tell you mine.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
I am calling the police.
They never make it in time.
This is Gail Weathers with an exclusive.
Authorities are baffled.
Been warned by the killer.
It all began with a scream over 911, like the plot of some scary movie.
actors. What's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. Never, ever say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back. Get another beer, you want one? Yeah, sure. I'll be right back.
Help me, somebody!
You're not scared, are you?
Well, let's start off first with the original Scream franchise. The first 4 films in the franchise were directed by Wes Craven, the horror master himself. Let's start with the first Scream film. Sarah, what did you think of the original Scream film, and did you enjoy the fact that it pulled upon so many of the films that came before it?
The Scream film? Mm-hmm. The first one?
The original one, yes.
Yeah, I liked the Scream film because it had references and it, because I kind of forgot his name. What was the name of the guy who died in Scream 3?
The guy who died in Scream 3? Be
I know
more
there are
specific.
many of
There are a
them.
lot of people
But
that died in
dude-
Scream 3.
The dude who was on, like, videotape in Scream 4.
Oh, Randy, yes.
Or died in Scream 2 and is in Scream 3. I don't remember
Correct.
which it was.
Yes,
But yeah.
Randy, yes.
Yes, Randy, yes. He was funny in the first one.
He was, absolutely.
And he made all the references and all the rules and stuff. So I really like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The original Scream film, for those of you that don't recall, was really an original film that kind of played upon the whole horror cliche. There's a lot of horror cliches and a lot of horror rules, as it were. And in this film, the character Randy, played by Jamie Kennedy, was excellent. Randy Meeks, who basically laid out the rules for all the horror films, and in many ways, a lot of the rules for the Scream franchise. And yet, the enjoyable thing is that they take those rules and they bend them and break them and turn them upside down.
It was very sad when he died.
It was, spoiler alert, he does perish.
Unlike Richie. Richie was not sad. No one liked Richie.
Well, apparently, a spoiler alert, Richie also dies, and that was not sad. But yes, Randy dying in episode 2, the second film, was very sad. But then, of course, he did come back by a video testimonial in movie 3, which was one of the high points of movie 3, which is one of my favorites of the franchise, if not the favorite of mine in the franchise, was Scream 3. But we'll get there. So the original Scream film, Sierra, obviously there's a lot of callbacks to Halloween, the original Halloween film.
Definitely.
In fact, they even show the Halloween film on screen during the pivotal scene when Randy is telling the rules of surviving a horror film.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a lot of Friday the 13th, a lot of slashers, a lot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There's a lot of homages. Yeah.
They're also watching Halloween when when someone is on the couch and they're like, "Look behind you."
Yep.
Look behind you, and then scream, and then Ghostface is behind him. That was funny.
That was definitely funny. And again, it was a nice use of the twisting of the events that occurred. That sitting there making fun of the Halloween food. Wow, just look behind you, run out. And then, of course, they always do the wrong thing. As something that one of the things that the original Scream film was known for is the opening, and that's something that's been parroted throughout all the Scream films to a certain extent. And that's something that was really interesting, is that Drew Barrymore, and you don't know this per se, Sierra, because you weren't born when Drew Barrymore was a large star, but she was huge and a massive star at the time in the mid-90s. So she was cast and on all the marketing materials as one of the leads in the film, and no one knew much about the film. And here you are 10 minutes in, she's the first to be killed, and you're like, oh, this is a Drew Barrymore movie. Oh, wait, it's not a Drew Barrymore movie. So it's kind of like a little bit of bait and switch, and something that they've played with tongue-in-cheek through the rest of the franchise. Were you surprised at that? I mean, I know you didn't have a lot of going into it knowing who Drew Barrymore was, other than the girl from E.T., but were you surprised at that opening and her dying so quickly?
Yeah, I definitely did not expect someone to die just like that, like really fast. But yeah, I had no idea who Drew Barrymore was.
Fair enough.
So I just thought that it was someone who was supposed to die.
Yes, and that should be something that should definitely be said about this. Is there's a lot of cameos throughout the franchise, because there's a lot of movies within the movies within the franchise. There's a whole series of films called Stab, based on the events of Scream.
I like that.
So a lot of people that were in horror films and part of horror royalty were brought back to play those bit parts. There's, I believe, Sarah Michelle Gellar's in one part. There's a few other parts that are filled out by characters that are definitely have played into the whole horror franchise overall. But originally, let's go back to the original film. This one started all. Were you surprised at all that there was 2 killers? I mean, that's certainly something that up until this point there wasn't a lot of buddy killers in the horror genre. There were some, sure, but at least as far as your education goes, this is probably the first time you had multiple killers. That
was right? Yeah. Wait, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the first time that I saw.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, yeah, Leatherface is the primary killer, but yes, the whole family was involved, certainly in the killing. So sure.
Yeah, but other than Texas Chainsaw Massacre, this is the first one that they were both doing it at like the same time.
Did you find that confusing at all, or did you were able to?
I thought it was kind of confusing. But then I realized like there are some parts where Ghostface was doing stuff that one of the killers was in the room.
Right, yeah.
Or not there. A
fun thing to do is go back and watch the film again and see which of the characters, Stu or Billy, are in the ghost mask face and who's doing the killing. And, some of them are pretty obvious, others aren't. But it's very, very, very interesting. A lot of bait and switch in this film. A lot of people were, blaming Cotton Wary, who was Liv Schreiber. That was a red herring. Sidney's father was a red herring. It's a lot of red herrings throughout this film, so it really kept you guessing throughout. But when you get to the end, you really kind of like, okay, that was satisfying. And then, of course, like any horror film.
At the beginning, I thought Billy.
Yeah.
And then Billy kind of stayed in my mind, but I didn't think Stu.
They did so much to try to throw you off. They right at the bat they said Billy, the boyfriend, got to be killer, and it ended up being correct. But they did a lot to try to muddy that throughout the film. They tried to say, oh no, it can't be Billy. Billy was in the room when he got attacked. It can't be Billy. So that's where the whole idea of 2 killers really paid off. The fact that you could have Billy in a room with Ghostface, so you're like, oh wait, Billy can't be Ghostface. He's right there.
And like that's never like from what I've seen, that's never like you've never like tried to deter someone from what like have someone that you say it is at the beginning and then like not be that. Is usually just Michael Myers. That's Michael Myers. Michael Myers is a killer.
Right, definitely. Well, transitioning at the end of the Scream 1, a lot of the principals survive, including Dewey and Nev Campbell's character Sidney and Courtney Cox's characters Gale Weathers. They survive and they move on into the second film, Scream 2, which in this case Sidney has graduated high school and she's at college. Which again, this is in and of itself, Scream 2 is a film that is very much a sequel, and also plays upon a lot of different cliches about horror films set in college. There's a lot of horror films set in sororities and fraternities and on colleges as a whole. So we haven't spent a lot of time yet delving into this whole micro-genre Sierra, but Scream 2 certainly plays like one of those sorority slasher films, and there's a lot of they play with a lot of those cliches and a lot of those in this film. And so let's talk about Scream 2
and rules about sequels.
And definitely rules about sequels. Randy's still alive. He's able to hand off his rules. He's like, well, you're in a sequel, so that means these are the new rules that are applied. So what do you think about Scream 2?
I really liked Scream 2. It had more Randy in it, so I like that.
For sure.
And I liked pretty much everything about Scream 2. It was really cool.
Right.
And I just liked how the Stab movie was in it, and
right. You open up now, just to give you a little, again, spoiler alert, but if you haven't seen it by now, you really should. Scream 2 starts out with the premiere of Stab, which is the first movie in the movie within a movie franchise in Scream called Stab, based on the events of Woodsboro. So you have basically the opening of the first film, Scream, parroted in the opening of the movie Stab with different actors and actresses. So it becomes a real meta movie within a movie situation, which as somebody who's a little older and can appreciate that type of tongue-in-cheek humor, I found that fabulous. I loved that opening. Jada Pinkett Smith and and her
Was
boy.
Scream 2 the one where that guy got stabbed in the ear in the bathroom?
Yes, absolutely. That was
That was sad, man.
Omar Epps. That's who I was going for. Yeah,
That looks like it hurt.
Phil got stabbed in the ear in the bathroom. That was disgusting. And then Ghostface comes and sits next to Jada Pinkett and basically chops her up, which was at the time was it kind of jump starts the events of the film, but also kind of sets as like, oh well, that's a good marketing ploy for the film. So not only is Scream itself becoming a hit phenomenon in the real world, it's because of this killing at the premiere of Stab within the world of Scream, the film franchise of Stab attains a cult status, and this will also come back into play later on in the franchise. But overall, did you enjoy the film Scream 2, Sierra?
Definitely did. I feel like it had a lot of twists and stuff,
It
and
did.
a lot of things that you wouldn't expect. And I really like Scream 2. It was just good.
It definitely. And it introduces first of all, it introduces the second. Timothy Olyphant is one of the killers. There's two killers again, and the second killer is Billy Loomis's mother, who was played brilliantly by Laurie Metcalf, and it's something that it's interesting because she plays a reporter in the film who's hounding Gale Weathers, and nobody knows that she's Billy Loomis's mother until the very end when it was revealed, because Sidney knows who Billy Loomis's, her boyfriend's mother would be, so she knew who Billy Loomis's mother was, but nobody else seemed to know who that was Billy Loomis's mother as she was playing a reporter. So that was an interesting tongue-in-cheek and an interesting parallel, I thought, Sierra, and you've seen the Friday the 13th films, at least the first four, is that Scream 1 and 2 sort of take the formula of Friday the 13th and reverse it. While in Friday the 13th, Jason's mother did the killing in the first film, then Jason does the killing in the second film. In Scream, Billy Loomis does the killing in the first film, and Billy Loomis's mother does the killing in the second film. So there's a nice parallel there. Did you enjoy that parallel? Did you enjoy having the two killers again, and one of them being a woman and the mom of the first character?
Definitely. One of my favorite parts about the Scream franchise is having multiple killers so you could try and sort out.
Definitely.
Most of the time having multiple killers so you can try and sort out which ones are the killers.
For sure. Well, February 4th, 2000 came the film Scream 3, which is my favorite of the franchise. And again, if you ask 10 fans of the film Scream they rank their films, they're going to get 10 different rankings. Everyone has favorites. Everyone hates different films. Scream 3 is my favorite. Again, directed by Wes Craven. This was fun. For me, being somebody who's worked so long in the film industry, this is really a parody of filmmaking. It's set in Hollywood. They are filming Stab 3. So Scream 3 is filming Stab 3, and they're filming a lot of the same characters. So you got somebody who's playing Sidney, you have somebody who's playing Gale, you have somebody who's playing Deputy Dewey. I mean, you got all across the spectrum the characters. So you have not only the characters themselves, but then you have other characters playing those characters, and those characters are well known. So it just becomes crazy. I mean, you got Parker Posey, Patrick Dempsey, Scott Foley. It's a huge cast. Jenny McCarthy's in it. I mean, it's just a fabulous film. And one of my favorite cameos was Jay and Silent Bob actually show up in a cameo when Gale Weathers comes out, and Jay says something hilarious, and Gale Weathers flips in the bird, I believe. So, I mean, it's a movie tie-in. Miramax was the company behind this film, also the company behind Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which is a film in its own franchise by Kevin Smith that kind of rolls out, and the two characters, Jay and Silent Bob, actually end up in Hollywood. So they end up on a movie lot running around, and one of the places they're running around happens to be the Stab 3. So very funny, very meta. Enjoyed it thoroughly. Sierra, how did you feel about this film?
I liked Scream 3. I liked how, I think there's one part in it where there's Randy on the videotape telling them what to do still, even though he wasn't with them. That was amazing. And I thought it just had a lot of depth into it, and a lot of, again, twists and turns like the Scream franchise just does. And it was really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, there's introduces Scott Foley's Roman character, who it turned out to be the half brother of Sidney. And this is actually the first time and only time in the franchise when there's only a single Ghostface. Roman was the Ghostface, spoiler alert, and the killer. So there's only one killer in this film. The first time and the only time in the franchise there's only one killer. And it's, it added so much, backstory. It all went back to Sidney's mom, Maureen, when she was an actress in Hollywood. So it kind of, it all made sense and it all pulled back. And as a whole, the trilogy 1, 2, and 3 were fabulous. And really, if you could have ended it there, it would have been great. They could have rode off to the sunset and been wonderful. Is there anything you didn't like about Scream 3?
Not that I can really remember. No.
Sure. Okay. Well, it's certainly a film that people love or hate. I love it. Some people hate it, but it's certainly a film that it goes above and beyond. It kind of centers the franchise, and it's no surprise that those 3 films were put out within 4 years, and then they took an 11-year hiatus. And it's like, okay, well, the first 3 Scream films are perfect. We don't want to mess with the franchise, but then the almighty dollar comes back, and they decide, hey, you know what? Let's make a Scream 4. In April 15, 2011, Scream 4 was released, phenomenally well received, did great. It was directed by Wes Craven, and is a film that, kind of, some people, again, either hate or love, but it's the 15th anniversary of the Woodsboro murders. Again, they're set back in Woodsboro. Sidney Prescott returns to help promote her self-help book. So 11 years have passed, and within the franchise as well as in real time. So, we're really starting to get these characters as a little older, as adults, and that's one of the things I liked about Scream 4 is that you were able to reunite with these characters, but at the same time, you're at the point where they are vulnerable but yet wiser. So all of a sudden, the rules have changed yet again. That these people were put through all these things a decade ago, and yet they're still being harassed, and they're still coming back to it with different things. So, what do you think of the film Scream 4?
I loved Scream 4. I thought it was amazing. I loved Kirby. Mm-hmm. I think Kirby was in Scream 4.
Yeah, she was definitely in Scream 4. That's where it was Sidney's cousin Jill is sort of the target of the the Ghostface in this film. Obviously, having Sidney come back to town was a big thing to do it. So, Dewey Wiley's now the town sheriff. Judy Hicks, who's played phenomenally. Played phenomenally by Marley Shelton. Introduces her character. So it's just an interesting, fun back in Woodsboro. They're again much similar to the first film. There's a party. They go to the the Stabathon. They have a Stabathon where there's a cult watching of the Stab film, so the Ghostface is going to be there. There's just a lot of cool things. The technology plays a big thing. The biggest difference between the first 3 Scream films and Scream 4 is the advent of technology. People have cell phones now. People have video, and that's brought up within Scream 4 that the killer is going to be online, making the kills, post them online, getting that type of fame. So that kind of brings in the whole.
There's cameras being used to
definitely
see and stuff.
So a lot of that stuff wasn't available in the first 3 films. So now instead of like cementing their franchise in a world where technology doesn't exist, they embrace the technology. They may say, hey, we're going to make these horror films and these characters embrace technology and use it, which is great because a lot of films don't do that. A lot of films take the opposite approach where the horror films tend to like, oh no, there's no cell phones in this film, so that was very exciting, I thought. So is there anything you didn't like about Scream 4?
No, that one was probably one of my favorites because I loved that one. It was amazing.
Yep. So, and this is fun because, again, there's also, we have Ghostface's 2 killers, one of which is Charlie, who we love Charlie, but, unfortunately, he turns on Kirby and kills Kirby, we think. Spoiler alert. Left for dead, and then he and Jill, who is Sidney's cousin, actually ends up being one of the Ghostface. So Sidney's cousin. So, part 3, you got Sidney's half brother as the Ghostface, and in Scream 4, Jill, Sidney's half sister, or Sidney's cousin is Ghostface. So there's a lot of familiar ties to Ghostface.
That's one of the things I like about the Scream franchise is
Sure.
that it's not the same killer every time.
Right, it isn't.
It's switched up every single movie.
Right, they use the same persona, Ghostface or Jason
Yes.
or Freddy, but instead of it being Jason Voorhees one character, it's many people playing that character. And I agree with that. That's because that gives you resolution. I mean, it's kind of a cheat in a way, but you don't have a superhuman, immortal character that just survives over and over again like a lot of the early slasher films did. However, I don't think that's realistic in the world building that they're doing in the Scream franchise. So in lieu of having one killer that can survive everything, come back and back and back, they have different people take up the persona. Which again, anyone can be. Like any good Scooby-Doo episode, anyone could be behind the mask. Anyone could be the one doing the killing. As we've seen, there's no real rhyme or reason other than having connections to Billy Loomis, being Billy Loomis, or connections to Sidney Bristow between the
Exactly.
who
Even
are
though
the killers.
Ghostface always comes back, it's not the same killer coming back. It's always someone new. Because it's not like you can't survive that long. Like you can it's weird having horror characters that survive that
Sure.
long. And it seems like the Scream franchise knew that, so they're not going to make any killer survive that long.
Absolutely. It should also be noted that Scream 4 was filmed in Detroit, and actually I was able to visit the set when they were filming in Detroit in 2011 or 2010, I believe, when they were filming. So it was kind of fun to see some of the vehicles and some of the sets before they showed up on screen. But again, it was a fun film. I thought it was great. The franchise could have ended right there. Sidney Bristow did not need to be involved in any other franchise. I mean, here's her cousin. She kills her cousin. If Sidney Bristow would have rode off into the sunset after this movie, they could have retired her character. I would have been happy. But of course, money is the purveyor, and that did not happen. And now we have another jump of 11 years to January 14th, 2022, when Scream, stylized, also known as Scream 5, is released. And this is kind of a transition film because you go from the three legacy characters, Sidney and Deputy Dewey and Gale Weathers, come back, but then you kind of transition and hand off to a younger set of characters where the franchise is going to go from here. Affectionately referred to, at least in the sixth film, as the Core Four.
Yes, we love the Core Four.
You love the Core Four, and obviously the Core Four includes Melissa Barrera as Sam Carpenter. You got Jenna Ortega as Tara Carpenter. You've got Jasmine Savoy Brown as Mindy Meeks Martin. And
Mindy is amazing.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, you've got Mason Gooding as Chad Meeks Martin. And it should be noted that while we loved Randy Meeks, he did make an appearance in Scream 3 as the video guy on video. He says, well, if you're listening to this, then I must be dead. And you're in a trilogy and and so there's a whole set of new list of rules. But we were able to be introduced to Heather Matarazzo, who stars as Martha Meeks, which was Randy's sister, who brought the video to Sidney and the gang on the set, and who later on in the life in the intervening 20 years has given birth to twins, Mason and Jasmine. Chad and Mindy, played by Jasmine and Mason, excuse me. And so they are our connection to Randy, which I think is great. I love the fact that they bring the connection to Randy back, and they have a memorial. The living room is a memorial to Randy Meeks, and it's just fabulous. And so this is again is a completely wholly different set. You're back in Woodsboro again. You have a lot of previous characters that come back. It's just it's just a fun thing. Now, this is very different. This is 25 years after the original spree in Woodsboro, so there's a lot of angst inside the city, expecting things to happen, and of course things do happen. This is what's known as, they coined the term requel. It's not really a remake or a sequel. You bring legacy characters back, so they're playing upon a lot of the stuff that's going on in the horror genre itself. And what do you think about the fifth film, Sierra, and what was your favorite part?
I like the fifth film. My favorite part was at the end when one of the killers came back from somehow burning her face on the stove and is somehow still alive.
Yes.
And was running through, and then Jenna as Tara just shoots her, and then somehow that makes her die.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Richie and Amber are revealed to be the Ghostface in this one, and of course,
Richie sucks.
Richie was played by Jack Quaid, who is, again, there always seems to be, whether it's Stu or the film student in part 2, there's always somebody who's like latched on as the killer to somebody who has a greater means, and of course, the person with the greater means is Amber, who is played by Mikey Madison, and she has a great desire to kill. But they're both kind of like I would say like they have a very much a, what are the name of the characters from that movie? Anyways, a Bonnie and Clyde relationship. They are in love, but they're always wanting to kill and create, so Jack and Amber and Richie want to create this whole fantasy situation, but in actuality, it's kind of just devaluates. Not one of my favorite films, to be honest. Primarily because they kill off, rest in peace, Dewey. They kill off Dewey Riley. David Arquette is no longer part of the franchise, and this is the start of where you're like, okay, well, this is a transition. They brought in a new core 4 led by Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega, and they're it's kind of the handoff. This is the first, like, okay, wow. So are they gonna, like Star Wars? Are they gonna kill off all the legacy characters over the course of the films? And thankfully that's not the case. Although rest in peace, Dewey. We miss you. We're gonna pour one out for you, but we missed you in this next film. And then
Please help me. I'm just down there.
There's a line here, girl.
You got a problem here, guy?
I had this secret. There's a darkness inside of me. It followed me here. And it's gonna keep coming for us. We share a certain history. This isn't like any other Ghostface.
What is this place?
A shrine. We've got to lure him in. We execute him.
Hello? Let's play a game.
You know you're like the 10th guy to try this, right? It never works out for the dipshit in the mask.
Maybe. But there's never been one like me, Gale. I'm something different.
That's why I'm gonna shoot you in the head.
You want me. So let's finish this.
Guys?
the final film in the franchise is the one that we went and saw in theaters,
Scream
March
6.
10th, 2023. It is Scream 6. Now, this is a huge change to the franchise because the setting of the film is moved over to New York City.
Speaking of seeing Scream movies in the theaters, I remember when you and Mom went to see Scream 5 in theaters.
We did, yeah.
It's funny.
It is funny. It's before you got into horror films.
I wanted to know if I could come.
Yes.
Because I liked movie theaters.
You're a little too young. You wanted to just go for movie theaters before you got into the horror franchise. But I mean, it was only a year before you got into the horror franchise. A year later, you're going with me to see Scream 6 and not Mommy. So it's funny how things change. But the core four is back. We thought for sure, at least I thought for sure, that Chad had died. because he was
I did too.
Left for Dead, but apparently Chad didn't die. So the twins are back. The Meeks twins are back.
Chad never dies.
Sam and Tara are back. And but they're all in New York. They're going to college. They're going to school. So it's again got that college feel, but it's also got a big city feel. One of the best scenes I thought was the scene that's heavily advertised in the promo, and that's the scene where they're in the bodega, which Sierra had to learn what a bodega was, but where Ghostface is in this contained area with people, live, real people that have no connection. They're just like, what's going on here? And then,
I thought they were just in Kroger.
They could have been just in Kroger, but they were in a bodega, which is important, like a neighborhood convenience store. It's primarily in big cities, definitely New York. So this film was ambitious, and again the opening, as is trademark with all the films in the Scream franchise, had a very unique opening, where it's kind of a bait and switch opening, where you're introduced to two characters that don't stick around a lot, but you thought maybe that the person is the people that these people were going to be Ghostface, but then they end up getting killed by the real Ghostface. So you have a situation where Jason and Greg are Jason and Greg are wannabe Ghostface, and they take their teacher, they catfish their teacher out at a restaurant, then they kill her, or at least one of them does. Jason does, and Greg gets all, they make it out that Greg's all upset. When in reality, Greg was killed by the real Ghostface killer, and then Jason ultimately receives his death. So at the beginning, you're just like, oh shit, things have changed. Excuse my French. Things have changed, and now the world is, we have all the rules are thrown out the window. And I think that's the case with Scream 6, is all the rules definitely are thrown out the window. Everything is taken up to the 10th degree. I thought it was amazing. There's the uniqueness of it. What did you think of the movie, Sierra? What was your favorite and worst part of it?
I loved it a lot. I feel like the best part of it is the switch. Like at the beginning, it's like, whoa, we know who the killers are already, but then we figure out, oh wait, nope, that's not the killer. I feel like that was a really cool part of it, and I really like that part. The worst part to me is probably that Dewey wasn't there.
Yeah, missing. I mean, after poor Randy passed away, Dewey was really the emotional heart of the film, and him dying in 5 was literally it was a gut punch.
Sad.
It was sad. It was a gut punch to me.
He survived so much.
He did. I mean, that was this kind of the joke. He's a pincushion. He's been killed. He's been he's been shot and stabbed in all different ways, and it's like, I guess it's time to finally caught up to him. But so it was sad to see that go. Although there's a lot of things going on here. One of the things I enjoyed was the return of Kirby, who is now an FBI agent.
Yes, that's perfect.
And who is on a task force to try to catch Ghostface. So that was kind of very interesting, because we all thought Kirby was left for dead. Although there were some clues in Part 5 that if you're an eagle-eye viewer, you would see that Kirby actually survived her assault
on the computer, right?
Yeah, it was on the computer. It was like a YouTube, little YouTube thing on the side. Next up, a survivor interview with Kirby. So that's when you really got the Kirby.
And if you didn't
survived.
have an eagle eye, you probably could have just looked up Kirby Scream 5 on YouTube and gotten like 6 million results.
True. And she did turn up in Scream 6. She plays a character, and for a while, she, again, like Sidney, like her, everyone is, one of the great things about these films is that they do a great job of, deflecting who the real, Ghostface is.
For a while, you think it's Kirby.
Yeah, for a while, you do think it's Kirby, and even up to the end, right up to the ultimate reveal, you really do think it's Kirby, but it is not Kirby. And this is a very interesting Ghostface, because the first time in the franchise, there's actually 3 Ghostface. There's a trio. There's a father and children team. So you got the father, played by Dermot Mulroney, as Wayne Bailey. He's a detective and Quinn's father. Quinn, who is played by Liana Liberato. She is a student at Blackmore University and she's also Sam and Tara's roommate, and she was left for dead, supposedly killed by Ghostface early in the movie. So again, there's a lot of bait and switch. Another character resurrected from the dead, as it were, to come back, and not something you expect to be a Ghostface. And then, of course, we got the brother that is played by... I don't remember.
Mindy always thought that the brother was going to be it. she
Right.
always thought the brother was Ghostface.
Definitely, and I don't remember who played the brother. That's gonna bug me. Anyways, there's a brother played by so there's a brother, and yes, and that's definitely one that was very interesting. But they are Richie's family, and they want to avenge his death. And then some of you may remember Richie as being the killer from Scream. Five?
Yeah, 5.
Yep, Richie, who is in love with not Jill.
Amber.
Amber, correct.
Was dating Sam, so it was a mix-up.
Right, so they're the ones that are responsible for Sam, and all that stuff. So there's a big confrontation, and one of the cool things I enjoyed was that they built this whole shrine to the Ghostface. So you get, there's a huge reveal. Again, Scream 6, there's been 5 movies, so you get all the props from the actual movies, but you get what would have been the actual killer's costumes and weapons, and all these things are in this huge memorial theater type of situation. So it makes a great final clash place, as well as kind of a complete reset of the whole franchise. So the interesting thing is again, the core 4 survive. Gal Weathers, Courtney Cox survives. Sidney Bristow. This we should also bring up. This is the first film that Neve Campbell did not participate in. She is not in the film at all. She is mentioned in the film that she and her husband, Pat, are out having kids and living a good life, and they want to be involved. But they keep that avenue open that she could return in future Scream films. But at the same time, I think the core 4 do a good job of taking the reins and moving on. Ultimately, Gail Weathers could have survived, didn't survive, wouldn't have made much of a difference to me. I think she's a character that's kind of used up her usefulness in the franchise. So if she were to pass on, peace out. What did you think of not having Sidney Bristow in this film?
That was sad. Sydney was like a huge part of the film.
Sure.
She was like the first person that got had a close connection to Ghostface, the first Ghostface, and she was like a big part of the film. She was always there.
Right.
She was the main character for such a long time, and she's just gone. But the core 4 are definitely a very good replacement.
But where do you think she could have fit in the film? That's one thing that I had was trouble as we were watching it. I tried to figure out where would you actually be able to put her in the film, because
what if she became a news reporter and because of Gail Weathers, she was worshiping Gail Weathers because Gail Weathers saved her that one time. So now she's going to become a new news reporter.
Well, possibly a little out of character for her. There's
weird.
A lot of me that enjoys the fact that she's having her happily ever after with her husband and her kid. There's part of me that's like, how do you shoehorn her in? And really, the only way to shoehorn her in would be have her be Ghostface at some point. That's really the only way to bring her back in the franchise and kill her off completely. I don't know if that, on one hand, that would completely...
That actually kind of makes sense, because she's gone, insane from all this time of seeing Ghostface and stuff, so...
Right. There'd have to be a lot of build-up to that to create it, but, it's at the same time, it's like, what else can she do? She's done it all, and if there's any more brought into it, it's almost like overkill, like, what are you doing? But so I thought the film was great. I thought it had the feel of a Scream film. It was taken up to the 20th degree with all the unique new situations and killings, and a lot more bloody, a lot more violence. But so I ask you, Sierra, where do we go from here? Where do you see the Scream franchise going from this point? Do you see the core 4 returning, and where do you see the Scream 7?
I kind of think that maybe Sam will turn and go past her breaking point and become Ghostface, but I feel like that'd be too obvious, and they don't like being obvious here.
Yeah, and we should point out that Sam Carpenter, played by Melissa Barrera, is the illegitimate daughter of Billy Loomis.
Sees visions.
So she does see visions.
And at the end of the movie, she is carrying the Ghostface mask, and luckily she drops it, but it was a hint that she maybe was thinking about being Ghostface.
True, and the introduction of Sam brings back the ability to bring Skeet Ulrich's character, Billy, who died obviously in the first film, into Scream 5 and Scream 6. So he's actually been in as many films as Dewey at this point, and which is kind of interesting as somebody who died. I enjoyed that aspect. I agree with you. It's something that's continue. It's the whole Sam issue with her psychosis and her predilection towards violence is something that certainly plays into it. It's going to be interesting to see where they go from there. If Sam and Tara are going to be able to have that relationship restored, or if Sam's going to continue to be haunted by her.
At the very beginning of the film,
father.
before the therapist died, I thought the therapist was Ghostface.
True. Well, I can certainly see that. At the same time, it's like hard to believe that someone as insignificant as the therapist would be Ghostface. But
yeah,
anything is possible these days, and there's a lot of bait and switch. That is our recap of the Scream franchise. Sorry we went a little long today, and it's been a while, but we promised to get back in the swing of things. I'm going to chain Sierra up at the chair. We're going to do podcasts every weekish or so in the summer. So hopefully we'll get back caught up. We got a few in the can that we need to talk about, as well as some new films that are coming down the pipeline that we definitely want to watch and review for y'all. Again, if you have any questions, you can reach us out at baddadhorror@gmail.com. You can visit us at baddadhorror.com. And Sierra, I ask this question at the end of every podcast: am I a bad dad for letting you watch the Scream franchise?
No. Well, I'm always going to say no.
Of course you are. You don't want me to stop letting you watch these films. Of course you're going to say no.
Yeah, but I would say no. But, I mean, kind of towards the side of, not every dad would do this.
True. I would say if you're a parent out there with children, preteens and teens, I would say the Scream franchise, while definitely very violent and certainly a horror film and horror franchise, big on blood and guts. However, they play it very chaste. There isn't a lot of nudity that you would see in the 70s slashers and 80s slashers. In fact, there's basically, I don't believe, any nudity in the franchise whatsoever. A lot of violence, just no nudity. So, the fact is, in even the first film, they play upon that a bit of a PG-13 relationship, which is, sort of how Miramax started this franchise. They wanted to go. They wanted to reach the tweens, as it were, teens and tweens, with a franchise that would be horror, but yet not too adult horror. So I think, many cases I certainly would be guilty of being a bad dad. This one I'm giving myself a pass. I don't think I'm a bad dad. And I think if you have kids that are interested in horror films, the Scream franchise is certainly one of the tamer films to watch.
Most teens already are pretty violent. Anyways, they already know about violence and stuff. So I would let them watch this.
Absolutely.
Film.
Well, for the first time since we started the podcast, our sign out will actually be significant because we've actually seen the films now. Until then, we'll be back.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back. I'm getting another beer. You want one? Yeah, sure. I'll be right back.